actually, I'm from South Georgia, in case you didn't figure that out. You know, I travel a good bit, and a lot of people from up the road, they really say, man, you talk funny. But last time I was up there, I told them, I said, you know, y'all didn't win the war. If you did, you'd live where we at. Ain't no doubt about it. But anyway, I'm with Bland Farms. We're originally started out as a little small farm in Georgia. My father did. My father and mother started when I was small, naturally. But anyway, as things progressed, we started planting onions in 1983. And in 1983, we planted 5 acres. And not only did we not know how to grow onions, we didn't know how to sell onions, and we couldn't even spell logistics, I can promise you. So we had a lot to learn, and we learned real fast, because when you come from school of hard knocks, you learn faster. You go on and you do something else because they don't allow you. We were just in a shipping seminar, they were speaking, and I tell you what's the truth. Somebody has a lot of money, because I couldn't lose what they losing, or I wouldn't be in business today, I promise you. They have some very deep pockets. And when you work for yourself and you work for the day-to-day, it's okay to draw your own check, but don't forget you have to sign it also. So it makes a lot of difference when you're looking at what you're going to do, what products you're going to do, and how you're going to go about doing it. And so we were very, very fortunate the fact that Vidalia onions became a product that was a tremendous thing come along all the time while we were just beginning to start to expand our farm. My father had been in business for some time, and we worked together, and he more or less did the farming and I did the selling, because I learned right quick it doesn't really matter how much you grow, it's how much you sell that really matters in the end. So I had to hit the road selling, and this is it, I can tell you. we had to do that. So we grew from 5 acres to, as we expanded, we went from 5 right on up to, I think we go now to where we're growing about 2,000 acres on our farm there. And we have about 2,500 acres that we actually contract outside of our own acreages that we have other people growing for us, that we joint venture on that, and we furnish the fertilizer and do the marketing and all. So basically we do roughly about 4,500 acres of Vidalias, which, and with that plus what we buy from other farmers, most of the time we end up doing anywhere from 40 to 45% of all the Vidalia onions that are sold down there. And what happened along the way, as you can tell by looking at this, previous was a map showing where we're located in Georgia, but what happened was Vidalia onions only come off during the first part of May, basically, or the latter part of April. And what happened to us is we had a very good product, and I'll quickly tell you that onion is grown from a little tiny seed that is planted around Labor Day weekend. And when you plant this seed, we plant it in a field that we call a seed bed, and it's like 20 some odd acres per acre of seed bed. And then you pull those plants up in November and transplant them to the field when they're about the size of your pencil. And I can promise you, I don't know if you've ever done it before, but if you ever crawled on your knees all day long and planted onions in a hole and put 100,000 to the acre, you'll go back to your day job in about 2 seconds. It is a hard life. So we plant these onions in November and we grow them through the winter. So we call these short day onions because they grow over the short days of the year, and characteristically, they have a very flat globe, they're a very flat, thin type onion that is extremely sweet, and that's what our market is. So when we harvest those onions in May, we sell them fresh, and then we put them in the storage and we grow them on through the summer, or we bring them out of storage during the summer and we sell them all the way up until September. But what happened was we found out that Vidalia created a new category in the produce industry of a sweet onion. And people needed sweet onions way beyond when Vidalias were gone. You know, so in turn what we tried to do was look for other places in the other regions that we could grow this onion in, but it had to be exact opposite climate from what we have. So lo and behold, we ended up in Peru. We ended up trying a few down there. How we got there, I don't know. We had this little guy come by the farm one day from UC Davis from Peru originally, and he had been touring the country and looking at different things that they do in America, and he wanted to get into the farming business. So my father was still living and involved with the farm, and Daddy was the kind of guy, he wouldn't talk to you too much if you walked up to him, but if you get in the truck, he could ride around and really talk, you know. He can tell you all about life in that truck. So he rides Carlos around in his truck for 2 days and sends him home with a gallon plastic bag of onion seed in his suitcase. I promise you. It was just like Johnny Appleseed. He goes back to Peru and he starts planting these onions in the desert down there. Peru is divided by the Andes Mountains, and all the onions are grown on the west coast, which is the dry part of the area. We have farms in Peru now that hadn't had but a quarter of an inch of rain in 40 years. It is extremely dry, but that is perfect for onions to be grown. So those onions we harvest down there in September, July, August, September, and we start shipping back up here. So we take the same identical customer that we've told all summer that the Vidalias are out here and give them the Peru sweet onion right behind that. So in turn, we keep that customer in the onions and keep them happy. And I tell you, y'all don't have enough of time in this arena, in this event right here, for me to tell you what it took from a country boy from Georgia to go to Peru and to negotiate logistics and get those onions from that farm through the canal back up to Georgia and get them on a place and pack them. But, you know, eventually we figured it out, and we have got a long way to go, but we have worked real hard on it. But we grow and ship about 1,400 containers of onions out of Peru. The majority of those we bring through Savannah, through that port. But in addition to that, we also deliver onions to Philadelphia, Long Beach, California, and also Seattle, Washington. And the reason we do there is because there's a lot of people in those areas, and you actually can get a ship to deliver to Philadelphia for the same price as Savannah. But it costs you so much more to pack them and produce them, and all the infrastructure is so much more expensive up there. The majority of them we do in Georgia. So that's basically how we got started with the Peru onion. But along the way, we found out that Peru runs out in like February, somewhere around, right about now, that Peru's will run out. So then we go to Mexico, and we ship out of Mexico, out of the Tampico region, which we're doing now. And then as we leave Mexico, we go up to Texas. And when we ship out of Texas, we get through with those and we come back to Vidalia. So Vidalias are kind of like our pride and joy and where we started at, but that just opened the door to create all this other business for us. And that's where we grow all of our short day onions at. Where we grow our long day onions at is a long day onion is an onion that's planted in the spring and is grows over the summer months and is harvested in the fall. So we bought a farm up in New York, not New York City. It's a long way from New York City, I promise you. It's in western New York, which happens to be a very beautiful part of the country. We bought a muck farm up there, and we grow actually long day sweet onions up there, and we call that the Empire Sweets. And that's a very successful program that we do because we got such a short distance between the onion farm and most of the people that live in Boston and New York and all. They really enjoy that type of onion. So we grow that onion there, but we also have farms in Utah. We have some joint ventures in California. We do onions all over Hermiston, Oregon, all the way up through Washington State. So we actually have to deal with everybody in the country one way or another. Our sales and our marketing all evolves around retail accounts. We sell everything we sell either directly or only a small part goes indirectly, but it all goes to the grocery stores. So we have to talk directly to the Krogers and the Walmarts and all of the world to sell and market this price. There's no government guarantees on onions. There's no guarantees at all, actually. You know, it was a funny thing when I grew up. I went to my mama one day and I said, "Mama, why did I have to ride this short bus every day?" She said, "Son, just be patient. If you can ever learn to sail, you won't never have to spell nothing. So don't worry about it. If you can sail, you can make it." So basically, that's what I started out doing, and I learned to sell onions because I didn't have a lot of options. So that's what we've basically done is build a marketing company on a farm in Georgia, and we've taken this little onion and we've carried it to a lot of different places in the world. And I promise you, if you get on a bus or a plane anywhere, West Coast, East Coast, you tell somebody you're You grow Vade onions, they treat you like a rock star, man. They'll let you in places you've never been in before. So that has been kind of the story of our life, and we do a lot of trucking. We do a lot of different things that goes into it, but that's basically the overview of what we do as a company.
All right. Thank you, Delbert. Next, we got Wes Himes with Trident Seafood.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not from Georgia, but they tell me I have an accent. So I'm lucky enough to work for a company called Trident Seafoods. Been around for about 35 years. Founded in 1973. We're 100% American owned, privately held. We have over 7,000 employees worldwide, and we produce frozen, fresh, and canned seafood. So, not real exciting. I like the onions a little bit better, but you know, all of our facilities, I think a lot of you, I've noticed a couple of our customers in here are inspected by federal, state, and government regulations. Probably one of our biggest challenges today. One of our greatest assets is our shore plants that are up in Alaska. That's where a majority of our product comes from. We have 5 value-added plants in the U.S., and we have 2 value-added plants in China, 1 in Japan. We have over 30 fishing platforms, including factory trawlers and fishing vessels. We have 3 transport vessels. We actually have our own freighters that move our cargo as we produce it in Alaska to Dutch Harbor, Alaska, one of the largest seaports in the world for fish, and then ship it all over the world. Sales offices in 9 countries. We sell into 53 countries, and we also source worldwide for over 30 species that were sold domestically and worldwide. Our customer base, like I said, a few of them are in the room. A lot of people haven't heard of Trident Seafoods for many, many years. We were in the back room of just about every restaurant that you probably ever went into. You know, we co-pack into other brands, and we're just really recently emerging into the retail markets, club stores. We do a fair amount of commodity sales into Europe, Russia, Germany, and many value-added manufacturers. So we even sell our competitors some of our product. So this map will represent, if you key it up, we'll get some arrows moving here, but Alaska is our major source of our production. So product comes down out of Alaska into the United States. Seattle's the major market for us, but then also into China, Europe. So then we source out of South America, Indonesia, Russia. You can see I prepared really well for this one, huh? The company really prides itself on a partnership with its fishermen. It's really what makes us who we are today. We rely on them heavily for a resource that today it's the last wild hunt to get our product. Our beef and poultry manufacturers, everything's farm raised. They know how much they get every day. For us, when we go out to fish, we don't know what we're going to get till we actually, as they say, have it in the net and on the boat. So it makes it very difficult to plan. I mean, there's projections. The resource is very well managed to make sure that it will continue. Many of our fisheries are certified sustainable, and that's driven a lot by our customers as well. We really take social responsibility to heart at Trident. I feel very fortunate to work for a company that any charity that we ever work for, they always match it dollar for dollar. When we had the tsunami over in Japan, we actually packed up over 20 containers worth of food, water, shipped it. You know, we got our steamship lines to actually donate containers to us. Got it out to there in Indonesia, one of the plants where we work at, or where we buy from. We installed a freshwater making system because there wasn't any good water there. So in a nutshell, we're just a small fishing company that we have many growing pains. I know I was asked to talk about, you know, what are our challenges. we're like everybody else here. There are so many challenges in logistics today. It's, steamship lines that throw out rate increases to every one of us. They call it a surcharge because they're in the red, and government regulations that we have to inspect all our facilities. I don't know if anybody here has heard of BRC, but many of our plants are becoming BRC certified, which is a huge undertaking. Just the paperwork alone requires 2 or 3 people. Most of our customers want a sustainable resource now, and that really drives not only us, but a lot of the manufacturers to make sure that they're responsible with what we're doing with the products that we're producing. That's really our story.
Great. Thank you, Wes. And we'll definitely have time for plenty of question and answers. But next is Chris Gaffney with the Coca-Cola Company.
Hey, thank you. And I'm not sure I can top onions and seafood. I'm fascinated by the supply chain design. But we'll talk a little bit about Coke today. And I joined Coke about 17 years ago, and I've been in the Atlanta community for about 30 years since I went to school down the street. And when I came to Coke, all my friends in the logistics business said, big business, but pretty simple. And I think 17 years later, I would say it's a big business, and it's more complex than it used to be. And that's probably a theme that resounds with lots of folks in the business. You think of our traditional product that is a carbonated soft drink you see there, and we got it on the old Happiness Factory. And if anybody's been to the movies in the last year, you've probably seen this little short. And in the supply chain, we thought this was kind of a chuckle when we saw it, but it actually speaks more about what goes on inside of our supply chain than you might realize. There's a lot more to be had. In North America, we probably produce, I think last year we had 1,300, 1,400 unique SKUs in just the sparkling side of our business. Then you add the rest of our portfolio, our food service business, our juice business, we start to get up in the 3,000 or 4,000 SKUs, and that's small for some businesses, but it's a business that probably 10 years ago was a third of that in terms of the product line complexity. We produce that in a network in the United States that's about 100 production locations and about 500 distribution locations. If you look at the magnitude of the business, we'll ship somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million truckloads a year that basically go in and out of our plants and DCs, so either our DCs or customers' DCs, and we'll make approaching 25 million store-door deliveries through the traditional red truck business. So it is a big business, and you want to talk about, we agree, pennies and tenths of pennies, in some places thousandths of a penny do matter in that business. And I'll let you go back one on that. When we when we originally look at the legacy of this business, the network at Coca-Cola was designed based on how this business grew over the last 100 years. And you can go into most small towns in the southeast and you can find a beautiful Art Deco building that was a Coke plant. You can go to Cartersville, Georgia, you can go up to Rome, Georgia, you can go to almost any city in the southeast. And at a point in time, we had hundreds and hundreds of small production facilities and even more distribution facilities. So the base of our network, in some cases, are facilities that are 60 or 70 years old that were designed to bottle glass Cokes when we had it. And so it wasn't necessarily a strategically designed network. We still make canned Cokes in probably 60 to 65 locations around the United States. But we've got some products that we only make in one place in the entire United States. And we've got to figure out how to flow all those products together to be able to provide a customer a complete order. And so that, from a logistics standpoint, has really driven a lot of our complexity. When you talk to customers, we sell pretty much to everybody. And believe it or not, our chairman thinks that we've got about twice as many customers that we could be selling to in this country. So there's lots of work to do to be able to be very efficient and effective with the largest of our customers, like a Walmart or a McDonald's. And at the other end of the extreme, we have to figure out how we can be efficient and effective in getting a single case to a small operator. You look at what you see Coke around the world and how we get product to people in the third world. We're going back and looking at those models and say, how do we learn from that to get product to very small outlets in really dense urban markets in the U.S. So a lot of different challenges for us in terms of how our business will continue to grow in the United States. And you can flip forward. If you really look at what's working well for us I think we're very, very fortunate to have wonderful people at Coke, and I'm very humbled by the culture that we have. People feel proud to say they work at Coke, and there are many companies in this room and in the building where people feel proud to say they work at that company. But it just means so much for someone to say, if they're a warehouse operator, they're a driver, they're a merchandiser, to say nothing of our professional employees, to be able to say, I work at Coca-Cola. And I think we have much more of an appreciation about that than we used to. It's a big obligation for us to lead a group of people who have so much invested in a business that's more than 100 years old, and we're trying to figure out how we tap into that, because when we look at the challenges that exist at Coca-Cola, the paradigm shift for us is, we've got 60-odd thousand people who work for us in the United States. We need every single one of those folks to come to work every day figuring out how they can help us solve the problems that we face. It's not the manager's job, it's not the boss's job. We need everybody to feel like that they're part of that, and then we're just starting to scratch the surface of that in terms of a unique and big opportunity for us to continue to get better. When it comes to our processes, I said before, our business started with hundreds of different companies that have come together, and so it's actually a legacy of a very decentralized operating philosophy. And what that gets is people do things differently. If you went to a Coke facility in Alabama, you went to a Coke facility in Seattle, Washington, as recently as a year ago, they did what people outside of our business was look at and say is something very similar, and in many cases they did it totally different. Because it was a culture that said, we do it the way we do it here locally. And you start to say, is there an opportunity for some of the things, if not many of the things, for us to figure out, is there a better way to do it? And we've started on that journey about 16 to 18 months ago, and it's fascinating to see the opportunities there. But it's a culture that had to move from not invented here, so I don't want to hear how somebody else could be better at this than me, to a culture that says, I think I'm pretty good at this. How do I share that with others? And if they're not as good as me, they can take on what I've learned. But if I find that they're doing it better than me, I have to be open to taking on what they did. And so a big opportunity for us in terms of how we do things in our business. And I would also say it's a business where technology, we're just scratching the surface of technology in our business. And they're huge, huge leverage points for us in this space. And I think you'll see us very smartly invest in technology in different ways over the next 3 to 5 years that really give us the opportunity to do what we call the genius of and, which is how do we find a way to be more cost efficient in a market where people still want to pay 99 cents for a Coke and costs are rising, and how do we do that in a way where we continue to improve service to our customers and at the same time improve safety and other things. And I think technology, along with people and process, will be a lever for us to do that. So last slide. Kind of a look to the future for us, and frankly, probably everybody in this room could use this slide when you look at it. And we've talked so much about complexity, and I think what we finally realized is, and this is something that most people would agree with this also, is it sure isn't going away, and if you want to grow your business, you're going to be the one who figures out how to embrace it and deal with it in a way that it doesn't erode what you're trying to do for your customers and for your owners of your business. And I think that's how we're really starting to think about complexity now. I think the neat thing about our business is we're not typically solving new problems. If you go downstairs at Modex and you look at a lot of the technology that's there, it's been deployed in other industries, in many cases 15, 20 years, and so we can look at places and we don't have to be the R&D guys. We can say, show me how this has worked in a very similar industry. Let me apply it in my industry and potentially deal with some of the complexity that exists in a more thoughtful way. Commodity pressure for us is just, I think, both the volatility and that. We just assume at this point it's infinitely increasing. And then given that hypothesis, how do you figure out how you operate? That continues to put pressure on both how we buy and both how we operate. We basically are kind of on a relentless mission to reduce waste in our business. And waste is anything that you as a consumer wouldn't pay for as part of purchasing product for us or doing business with us. And that has to be part of the DNA of what everybody does every day at our place. Increasing capability in our folks. I said we have wonderful folks, but I say a lot, you have to feel like a 5th grade student if you're in industry this day. You have to feel like I have to learn everything that you're supposed to learn in 5th grade, and next year I'll get to go to 6th grade. and I'll start learning all over. And I think it can be very liberating if you say, as somebody like me who's in the middle of your career, I go to school every day. And if I'm not learning something this year that will help me be better next year, then I'm letting myself down and I'm letting my company down. And I think we have to create a culture where people feel like they're going to school all the time. And if you do that, we can build capability for every single person in our business. Some of the smartest people in our business are people who are in the front lines of our business. If we can help them learn, help them grow, we can do the things and we can meet the challenges that kind of come at us. The last point is something that I think almost everybody's dealing with here, is when we got to this business 16, 17 years ago, many times the lead time we got from a customer for an order might have been a week or more, okay? In some cases, I could find places where we had 2-week lead time from customers. And some of our people, when things were tough at the plant, they would say, can you push that lead time back a little further? Could we get them to order a month out and maybe a couple months? And we finally said, that's the wrong game. And now we've gone the other way with it, and we've seen our lead times in the last 2 years, and a lot of our traditional order businesses squeeze from 7 days down to 3 days, down to 1 day. And everybody in our business understands now that we have to figure out how to be good at same-day fulfillment. You're talking about 6 and 12-hour lead time cycles, and people say that's crazy, but we talk to people in the room, and we talk to our customers, and they go, well, we're doing it, so maybe you can figure it out, or maybe we can go do business with somebody else who will. And I think that's something that has become a part of what we're trying to figure out how to do, is how to take time out of our business as well as waste. So that's a little bit about Coke to start things off.
That's great. I've got a couple of questions, and we'll open it up to the audience, but one being food safety is obviously rightfully or wrongfully on front of minds of the consumers in the media today. And with the Food Safety Modernization Act, what are y'all being forced to, I mean, this is a large question, but what changes are you being forced to do on a day-to-day basis to adhere to those standards or prepare, for what's to come around that act and around global food safety as a whole? And anybody can take this. This is not directed toward any one person, or y'all can answer it.
We can all go back and forth on it.
Sir?
I said we can all go back and forth on that one.
Well, actually, we got a total different situation with onions than you do with Cokes and seafood naturally. And by the way, you could probably put some Vade onions in that seafood and do real well.
We could.
But one thing, food safety is something that's near and dear to all of us, and you got to stay with it. I mean, you can't ignore it. And even though there's very, very few things that happen to an onion, you still got to play the game. You got to be as good as you can be. And we're so far behind. In Peru, for example, when you go in and you ship from Peru to Europe, I mean, you could take what they let you get by with and be the strictest regulations we could have over here. So food safety, I think this country is beginning to get in place, and don't get me wrong, I'm not asking for more regulations, but I think we have got a lot to learn about being better and cleaner and more more recyclable than what we're doing now. And this is probably the last place in the world for it happens in South Georgia, but I can tell you it's already there, and we're having to do it too. So it's been a fun process for us because you look at it like it's a challenge, but you don't just imagine. We've gone from where it used to be. I remember we started identifying onions because I saw some labeling machines in our citrus packing house in Florida in 1983, and I brought those heads home and started putting little decals on the onions. And we've gone from that to now you can actually take a D10 label and scan it and tell what field that onion come out of. And I'll never forget, actually, my desire one day is for you to go in the store and scan it and see a picture of the field and the people that actually did the work. I think it can be that good. And I think the more information they get, the better you are, the better everybody is, and everybody's more comfortable.
Yeah, Wes, if you want to take it.
Well, food safety obviously is really at the forefront in the U.S. today, and there's more and more regulations, auditing that's occurring, and it's really getting all manufacturers to look at their processes every day to see how they can do better and provide the public with safe, wholesome food on a daily basis. And the challenge is, from a manufacturing standpoint, is that you have to be able to document and control that process for us, from the time that fish is caught in Alaska or Indonesia. We're kind of like you. We can tell which boat that fish was caught on, which plant it was processed at, what value-added process it went through. But then to control it at the warehousing level and at the trucking level, which in the past, that's been very difficult for as manufacturers to really control it. It's kind of like once it gets on a truck, it's out of sight, out of mind. Well, now with BRC regulations, global food safety initiatives, we have to be able to document and educate our third-party providers in that area as well. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is kind of getting past the good old boy mindset of this is how we've always done it, and really evaluate, well, instead of this is how we've always done it, how can we do it a little bit better? And it's really our responsibility to make sure that the public does have a good, wholesome food. So, and you're right, it has just kind of started. In Europe and other areas, it's really been a focus for a number of years now.
And I would just emphasize a couple of points. The first point that Delbert made, I think, is a big one, is you have to move it from a view that it's a burden and turn it into something that can help you compete differently. And I think that's not necessarily easy to do, but when you take that attitude about it, I think it's a totally different approach. And so I think that's a big deal. And I think the point that Wes made is the consumer is interested in your view of food safety from the farm to the shelf. They don't care what partners you do business with. You're on the hook for how everybody performs. And so whether you're a service provider, whether you're a contract manufacturer, whether you are an owner, everybody has to play at the same level. You can be fantastic inside of the four walls of the plant, but if the guy who takes it from you doesn't handle it well, it's all for nothing. And I think it's been a dramatic shift for us at Coke, where historically we had a brand obligation to take care of that product from a quality standpoint, to where we started to look at external standards like ISO that were out there and additional regulations, and just the bar rises every single year. And I think customers feel like they need complete transparency, and ultimately, if not now, within the next year, consumers do expect to be able to pop something up on their iPhone and be able to understand everything about a product that they're considering purchasing.
Okay, my next question, obviously, Chris, you alluded to commodity pressure, margin compression, whether it be with commodities, whether it be with fuel, whether it be with people, processes, and technologies that are associated with keeping up with the Food Safety Act. How are you all, I guess, being in the supply chain world, are you getting a lot more questions with how to make things more efficient? And I know technology plays into that, but if one of y'all could walk me maybe what you're doing different from 5 years ago from a supply chain perspective to keep your margins, if any of y'all can allude to that, to answer that, how you're able to pass that along.
I'll start with this one, and then we can go from here. I think for us 5 years ago, there was ad hoc focus on kind of structured productivity efforts, structured continuous improvement efforts. It existed in some places. It might occur in response to a problem, that type of thing. And our culture today, it's a global initiative. Pretty much every single employee is involved in it. It started with places where products were made and moved, and now you've got people in offices and call centers who are involved in those kind of programs. And we used to teach certain people tools to get at that stuff, and now it's everybody is involved in that. And I think we used to, again, do it in pockets, and now we're involved with customers, we're involved with suppliers. And I think the good news, bad news is that at least for the next couple of years, we got plenty of things that we still don't do very well, that we got plenty of waste to get rid of. Now, I probably could theorize that that's going to run out sooner rather than later, but that's kind of how we're probably approaching it, at least today.
I think we've got a pretty similar approach, although we're a much younger company than Coke. It's really a new concept for us to really evaluate our plants and figure out how many pounds per man hour can a production line put out, and then reevaluate those lines to figure out, well, with some new technology or some new equipment, could we actually increase that productivity but still meet our food safety requirements, our safety requirements in the plants. We've been pretty fortunate the last couple of years that our safety record actually has improved. But on top of that, we have been able to get more pounds per man hour out of our plants. But you have to picture that on a fishing vessel that is a production plant inside a 150-foot long boat. How do you look at those types of things to figure out how can you process more, recover more of our resource so there's less waste, make sure everybody's safe, and do it all the time when you could be on 20-foot rolling seas? We've got some unique challenges, but they're really the same as everybody else. We just have to constantly look at our equipment and our people, invest in that equipment, educate the people so that we can do just a little bit better, because consumer today doesn't want any price increases. They're all hurting quite a bit from the recession. And I think most manufacturers have been asked to hold the line on their pricing probably for at least 3 or 4 years now. And that's tough because ingredients have gone up, cost of labor's gone up, and I think, you know, the good manufacturers have been able to do that. So, but today, there's a lot of suppliers that are now coming back as the economy's turning around, and they all want increases. So, I mean, it's a challenge every day.
Yeah, I think what basically they're trying to say is when you're actually at the very beginning, if you're a producer or you're a farmer or whatever, you know, you're kind of like the bottom of the food chain, and the stuff starts rolling from up here and comes down. And like you see these commercials like, and I won't call any names, but some of these major chain stores talk about how they're doing to help the economy and, I mean, help the environment and all this green stuff and all. And then they pick up the phone and say, look, if you can't use 120% less packaging this week than you used last week, we're going to call somebody else. So it's kind of like feast or famine out there. You either do it and you get right with it, or you're going to miss business and it's going to go right on down the road. So it's not a matter of whether you're going to, or if you're thinking about it and you need to figure it out, you got to. We're getting the same price for onions we were 10 years ago, actually. We either got to grow them faster, better, and do it more economically, or either we're going to be making a lot less money. So it ain't that hard to figure out. Really pretty simple if you want to know the truth.
What was your biggest challenge when y'all first went down to Peru to get the product back up here and market?
The first thing, I couldn't understand about it. No, one of the biggest challenges in Peru is, well, to start with right off the bat, Sally used to be like $3.08 or $3.80 to the dollar, and now it's like $1.80. So their money is not worth is worth a lot more toward our money. So that economics has changed a lot. So it's basically the same thing here. But the biggest problem in Peru is you don't have the infrastructure. You're not able to call up the extension agent or the governor's office and say, hey, man, send me out here and somebody can examine this or test this. You don't have all that in Peru. You're on your own down there, buddy. You either figure it out, and like with the logistics and the getting the product from the farm to the port is an unbelievable challenge. And it's not the basic things of making a product. It's not, their labor's cheap and there are a lot of them and they appreciate the work. But once you get that onion harvested into the shed, you got to get it to the port. And them guys down there, I'm telling you, they might, if they go on strike, they don't just stay home, they put rocks in the middle of the road. And you can't get through. I mean, they're not really worried about you trying to get onions to the port to export. They're concerned about their kids and their family and what they're going to eat for lunch the next day. So those type challenges is really the biggest thing that goes on in there is the infrastructure and fighting that every day.
My last question, and then I'll just open it up to just the new government regulations concerning trucking obviously have an impact on y'all. Is that much that y'all want to speak about, or?
You better let them talk about that, because I might get in trouble.
Go ahead.
I'll take a shot. You know, it's hard to argue with safety. Okay, safety is foundational to what we do, and so if there's regulation that's fundamentally founded in making the roads safer, we're not going to do anything but support that, because there are employees as well as people driving next to our trucks. We are interested in things that help reduce congestion, and I think, so anything that can help enable that, we're interested in that from that standpoint. If we can figure out how regulation can help from an environment standpoint, we're in that game too. From a sustainability standpoint, I think we feel ultimately we compete better if we're on the front side of that than the back side of that. So I think when it comes to that type of regulation, we'd rather be on front of it and doing a lot of collaboration, frankly, with people in this room, people in this metro area, as well as people in Washington. I think it's a fact of life. I think from a bias standpoint, our general bias is we'd rather have the opportunity to regulate ourselves and be transparent about how we perform as the first rule, and if we deliver against that, have that be really the burden of regulation. So I think that's a couple thoughts on that.
I think one of our major concerns is the timeliness at 3PL providers. There seems to be an undercapacity at times at some of the distribution centers, exorbitant amount of times carriers are waiting to get unloaded. And that's something that, again, we need help with the third-party warehouses that we deal with, at least in our industry, especially on frozen products. How do we keep the drivers moving? And I use an example that we had analyzed most of our local distribution in the Seattle market because we move a fair amount of product to our production plants. And so we went to drop trailer programs on almost everything, shipper load and counts. They were coming to our facilities, but allowed the drivers to actually have a turn time of about 10 minutes at each one of our facilities. And then I expanded that out into the 3PLs. Now on the nationwide distribution for us, that I've had carriers actually tell us that they're going to analyze their delivery points, and they're actually going to start pricing based upon how long they average at these delivery points. So again, the tough part is that cost is being pushed back up to us when that occurs, and we have to try to figure out how can we be more efficient again to try and hold our line on our pricing, but keep the drivers within the hours that they're required to drive now. And quite honestly, I got a soft spot for the drivers. I still carry a CDL license, and that's how I started in this industry. So, it's kind of a tough area for me to really answer because I think most of the drivers are pretty good guys. There's a few that probably gave some of them a bad name, and then that required government regulation to step in and start setting some rules down for them.
Thank you. Now we'll open it up. If any of y'all require a microphone, I think the room's small enough, but if y'all have any questions, yes, please go ahead.
Following up on that, is your supply chains going to be adjusted for the hours of service? Terms of legal reach,
Nobody's approached us yet, but there's definitely rumblings going on right now about that. And again, that means that really we're going to have to invest in some more infrastructure and technology to be better at routing. We contract all of our carriers, but we still have to be better at what orders we actually give to them so that they're more efficient. So challenge with the truckers is they all want more money, so you call up and say, hey, I have a load to tender, and every one of them raise their hand and say, I'll take it.
I would say our network is on average a much shorter haul network where we're really not up against it on the highest percentage of our moves. That said, we do recognize that we've got a portion of our network that's kind of in that no man's land where it's really above a day and not, and it's less about network redesign and it's really more reshaping the flow. We are sensitive to what we've got to do to keep trucks moving, get them loaded in and out. I think we're in a world where we used to think 2 hours was right, and I think we're not far from a world where we want trucks to be unloaded and loaded inside of an hour. So I think it's less the physical network design and more the business process for us. And I think by the same token, what we're trying to do is level a lot of our flow and make sure we've got equal flow across the weeks and that type of thing, where we've got predictable moves where a carrier can tie back all to it and they can maximize the utilization of their driver work week. So that's probably, versus physical infrastructure, it's more design of the process and the flow.
Any other questions? anything else y'all would like to add?
I'd just say I'd like to thank folks for coming out today and supporting MODEX. It's the first year for us to have the conference. It's a big deal for the state of Georgia. It's a big deal for the metro area. If you've got the badge, go down there and take the time. You know, these vendors have made a commitment here. They've got the choice of where they invest a finite amount of resources. We want this conference to grow. It is the first year. You don't get everybody in the door. So tell your friends and make sure you plan to come back when it comes back to town.
All right. Thank you.